Shadow of the Colossus is a masterpiece. Let me explain why. For those who don't know, Shadow of the Colossus is a PS2 game that came out in 2005, blew all of our minds, and recently got remastered. To save the girl, go kill 16 Colossi. Simple. The reason why it's so good is because it's a game seemingly stuck out of time. After we get Madden 36 featuring the corpse of Tom Brady and the hotly anticipated Pokemon Hustle and Flow, there will still be a reason to visit the Forbidden Land. The core experience holds up 13 years later, and I'll bet it holds up when the PlayStation 8 remaster comes out with the hard light aggro that you can ride. For now, I want to try to break down specifically what it is that makes Shadow so good. As anyone will tell you, it shines most in two main things: aesthetics and conveyance. While it's not Rainbow Road by any stretch, it does showcase a unique visual style. From the moment you enter the Forbidden Land, it's clear that this place is different somehow. Different from the seemingly normal world that you travel through to get here. The very first shot of it is one that displays its scale and emptiness. And this feeling only becomes more apparent as you progress through the game. Everything is gently bathed in this golden twilight lighting through a thin veil of muggy clouds. This gives everything you see a slightly melancholy and forgotten feeling. It's a quiet and peaceful place. It only takes traveling to the first few Colossi to convey that this land is empty. Empty is the primary characteristic of the Forbidden Land. You are the most life this place has seen in who knows how long. The land does not care that you are there. It exists for itself and by itself. You are the trespasser here. If you weren't there, many of the Colossi would just watch, or stay hidden, or not engage you. You are the one digging them out of their holes and waking them up for your own needs. There's a very subtle feeling of perversion as you stir these indigenous beasts and slay them. No single part of the Colossus hunting process ever rewards you for doing so. Not in the traditional sense of, hell yeah, rock and roll, kill it with fire. Quite the opposite. The way the Colossi collapse and decay is presented in a way that breeds mourning, tragedy, and loss. The brilliance of Shadow lies in its conveyance. The way the story is presented to you, the magnitude and strength of the Colossi, your helplessness in many ways. First, let's look at your character, Wander. Here's a guy who we very quickly learn has conviction in his heart, if not a little misguided. The second that consequences of his quest and actions are brought up, he immediately says that he doesn't care. He's got a one-track mind: save the girl, undo what's been done. There isn't even a lot about Wander that's explicitly told to us. He barely talks, and rarely does anyone ever talk or interact with him. We learn what kind of person he is through gameplay. As you adventure, it starts to become clear that Wander is not really anything special. He doesn't even seem like that experienced of an adventurer. He has a bomb-ass sword, but swinging it is a chore. He only has the one swing, and it's clumsy. You can piece together that he is no swordsman. The best he can do is stab, which honestly is fine for his purposes. Even the way he moves around the world is labored and slightly awkward. His dodge roll has an ugly dismount, and he gets thrown around quite easily. Don't even get me started on his swimming. And when he gets hit, he stays down for a very long time. It's clear he's not a fighter. Even some of the ways he gets on his horse is awkward. Many of his actions in the game convey that he doesn't know quite what he's doing or what he's in for. But hey, he's doing it. A braver man than most. If there's one thing he does well, it's ride a horse. I mean, hot damn, son. It's also worth mentioning the remastered graphics when it comes to his character model. Before, he had slightly ambiguous PS2 face, which actually looked really good at the time and still does. But now he looks very real. This is one of the most striking differences about the PS4 version. He looks like he has a more neutral, contemplative expression, whereas before, he looked terse, almost angry, certainly more determined. These two versions dramatically alter the perception of the hero. One is stalwart and filled with single-minded conviction. The other is almost more of a passenger, along for the ride on this adventure, whereas before, Wander seemed fully in control and a shot caller. Neither of these portrayals is any worse than the other, but it's worth noting that they both tell a slightly different story. If the visuals and the aesthetics they carry is the first half of the Shadow of the Colossus coin, its conveyance through gameplay is the other. There are so many memorable, understated moments throughout the game. Like when you first lay eyes on the 5th Colossus, just sitting there as much a part of the world as the lake and the ruins, perfectly conveying the Colossi are as old and cryptic as the land itself, like they are an extension of it. What a cool feeling. All of the Colossi introduction cutscenes capture this sense of awe and overwhelming presence. One thing you will be most engaged in doing throughout the game is hanging on for dear life. When a humanoid Colossus rears its head back to try to fling you off, it's an exhilarating white-knuckle moment. You can see how Wander is just thrown around like a ragdoll. Moment to moment on a Colossi's back is full of tension the closer you get to finishing the fight. Few things are as exciting as landing that last big stab right as your stamina is on its last pixel. As much as Shadow can be praised for how it presents all its elements to you, just as much can be said about what goes, well, unsaid. So much of the game is a mystery. What is that black ink that spews out of each Colossi? Why does it attack me and seem to be absorbed into me? Will all of this even work? Can I even trust this omnipotent, foreboding voice that's guiding me? Is all of this worth it? All you can do is extract what satisfaction you can from seeing each of the stone idols crumble upon your return to the sanctuary. It does a perfect job of giving you just enough to go on and venture forth to the next Colossus, and little enough so you never really have all of the answers. It's all for the sake of the interesting narrative it weaves and its tragic conclusion. And by the way, the cycle of pacing of this game is genius. Learn about new Colossus, hunt it down, fight it, return to Sanctuary. Repeat. Let me break down why this is so brilliant. To start, you get a cool, cryptic slam poem about the next target. You get a chance to see the stone idol that represents it, and more importantly, a chance to speculate and just wonder. Which bleeds into the next step. The journey to the next Colossus gives you plenty of time to wonder about what the beast will be like. What will it look like? How big will it be? What cool new area will I fight it in? This setup does something that, when implemented well, is one of the most coveted aspects of an amazing video game. It lets your imagination run wild. You get to piece together the meat of this narrative, you get to think about what's been presented to you and form your own opinion, without the game telling you how you should feel. You are the one moving everything forward, and that feels fantastic in a game. Every new area is such a cool and unique experience. Oftentimes you'll enter an area without finding the Colossus just yet, and your mind gets to wonder about how the fight will go down. And third, right after you beat a new Colossus, you're sent back to the Sanctuary, and your primary objective is once again presented to you, to remind you what this is all for. And while there isn't much in the way of getting you to necessarily care all that much about the girl or what her story is, and necessarily Wander's relationship with her, it's kinda enough to just rely on, hell yeah, true love, save the princess. It's also not even all that explicit about being a romantic relationship. It boils down to, she got a raw deal, and now you want to fix it, whatever the cost. Right after you're reminded of your quest to resurrect the girl, you set out once again into the stark, open, and sadly beautiful Forbidden Land. You have nothing to go on but your sword to point you in the general direction of the next Colossus, which, let's be real, can be a frustrating mode of navigation at times because it points to the next Colossus as the photon flies, meaning it draws a straight line from you to it, ignoring the intricate path that you may need to take. And now I will defend this choice by the game designers. Consider the alternative. If the way to your next objective was laid out for you with a line on a minimap, you would miss everything around you. And everything around you is what Shadow of the Colossus is. The game is the environment. It's given heavy buildup in the intro, it's where you spend 90% of the game, and it gets a longing, melancholy sequence at the end where it's sealed off forever. Odds are you would focus on the destination rather than the journey in that case. Making your way through the land that feels barren and forgotten and steeped in some sort of vague importance is mostly why I return to the game every few years. Traveling its gaping chasms and dusty plains is the most effective way for me, the player, to feel what this land is like, not just to see it or be told that it's special. Despite the rather grim and dire context your adventure is placed in, the land itself and its scarce inhabitants are peaceful. Nothing in this world means you any harm. Everything you meet in this world is content to be left alone. The Forbidden Land is a place stuck out of time. It seems to exist on the edge of reality, in a dream. This is accomplished by letting you spend so much time just being there. I would also be remiss to exclude the soundtrack in all of this, which is absolutely astonishing. The intro sequence to the Forbidden Land is, by itself, way more than enough to convey the mystic nature of this land and what lies within. The high strings give a sense of sadness and longing, but also momentum toward a goal. My favorite thing about this is how it takes its time. You get a full 4-count rest that conveys contemplation and mystique. The way the music will dynamically change during different phases of a fight is thrilling and completely appropriate. So much of the feeling of this land and the Colossi are conveyed through its music. But that's the best part. When you're traversing the land on your way to the next Colossus, this is what you hear. Even the music, or the lack thereof, is specifically designed to convey emptiness. This is all before we even touch the plot. When you boil it down, it's really a depressing tale that isn't quite what it seems on the surface. Kinda like the land you spend most of the game in. Turns out the omnipotent guiding force was actually a demon tricking you into releasing the 16 shackled pieces of its essence so it can be resurrected. Wander is betrayed and becomes the new vessel for the demon. That's what the sinister black tendrils were doing when they attacked you after being released from each Colossus. There's this brilliant dichotomy between what you're told and what you discover. For example, as you progress, there are a few theming elements that are added. The obvious one being the number of ominous shadows that surround you upon returning to the sanctuary each time you defeat a Colossus, totaling in 16 by the end. The less obvious one is that after each Colossus, a white bird appears around Mono. Did I mention that's her name? Her name's Mono. The more Colossi you slay, the more demonic Wander becomes visually. Around the last handful of Colossi, special cutscenes start to trigger, opening up the solidarity of this mission. It's no longer about Wander being alone in this place where he can take his time and do what he needs to do to rescue the girl. There are now outside forces getting involved, amping up the stakes. But what's nice about this is that nothing really ever feels forced or like a Deus Ex Machina coming in at the end to change things dramatically. Ultimately, Mono is brought back to life while Wander is sacrificed to destroy or seal away Dorman the demon. Wander got what he wanted, but at what cost? The Colossi are dead. Sure, they were incarnations of a demon, but they were peaceful in nature and existed harmoniously with the Forbidden Land. The bridge is now collapsed, preventing anyone from coming or going ever again. Mono is back, but Wander is now a baby, I guess? This is probably the most ambiguous part of the game, and up for the most speculation. But what all of Shadow of the Colossus culminates in is a shame. It's a shame things turned out the way they did. It's a shame such mysteriously beautiful creatures had to die for ultimately a nefarious lie. It's a shame Wander went through all that just to be betrayed and forsaken. I mean, really, at his heart, he was doing what he believed was right. Wouldn't you in your position? It's a shame that he doesn't get to see the fruits of his labor. And what a labor it was.